This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It is true. The NFL is changing. There are new things about the NFL. There are new trends about the NFL, and it's always constantly changing. But there has been a definitive trend that, for once, actually doesn't go in the favor of the offense. You've probably heard this term be used for a lot of different things, but the term is too high safety. So first and foremost, what is too high safety? Because this term, while it's been around in football forever, is new to mainstream football discourse. Like, it's gotten to the point to where you might hear somebody who barely even thinks about football talk about too high safeties and how it's doing whatever to the game. Too high safeties is just another way of saying cover two in zone. Right? Like, that's usually what people mean when they refer to too high safeties. But now, since this term has been used to kind of talk about the entire change that's been going on in the NFL over the last couple of years, too high safeties just become a substitute for zone coverage with multiple safeties over top. So people will call cover three too high safety, even though that's three safeties high. People will call palms or cover four too high safety. It's basically a way of describing teams taking away the deep ball as an option in the passing attack. Now, I found a clip of Mel Kiper, and I might need to react to this on a different channel, but I found a clip of Mel Kiper like complaining about this and how too high safeties are ruining the fabric of NFL offenses and ruining the game. And I just find that quite silly. Like, deep balls still exist even though teams are playing more too high. You just got to work for it a little bit more often, you know, kind of like how it was before teams decided to get out of all these too high looks and play a record low of safeties over top. Like, before that, it wasn't easy to get a deep ball completion. The deep ball was very rare. It's only like a 5-year period in the NFL where deep balls were as common as they were. And that's not the fabric of the NFL. That's just what we got used to over 5 years. Now, look, the changes in the NFL and the changes with how defenses pursue these offenses in the NFL are going to change a lot of things about how we talk about the league, right? Passing yards, the cumulative numbers that we usually use as a bar for good are going to change. Like, 4,000-yard passing is going to be a lot more impressive than it was a couple of years ago. 3,500 yards passing, going to be a lot more impressive than it was a couple of years ago. It's not going to be rare to see the 3,000-yard game manager. That's because these trends are forcing offenses into different directions. Think of it like this. NFL trends, especially on offense and defense, tend to act like a grandfather clock, like a pendulum and a grandfather clock, right? They go back and forth and back and forth. And on one end, it's running the football. And on the other end, it's throwing the football. Now, you'll get some times where the pendulum swings really strong to throwing the football. That is what we were in not too long ago, right? From about 2011 to 2022. The pendulum for running the football was leaning all the way in the direction of throwing the football. And it made sense to throw the football because teams were having high success rates throwing the football. Defenses weren't covering the deep ball very well. And it made a ton of sense as far as efficiency is concerned to get the most yardage out of each play, to not surrender and run a run play where you can get maybe 4 to 5 yards a carry, but throw the ball downfield where you can get potentially 10 yards per pass attempt. It just made more sense in terms of efficiency to throw the football deep. Another way you'll hear this used in a different sport, if you're not as big as a football fan as you are a basketball fan, think of the reasoning about why the three-point shot has gotten so popular and so used in NBA offenses over the last 10 years, because 3 points is more than 2 points. The same is true for throwing the football. If it's not that difficult to get a 10-yard pass versus a 5-yard run, you're going to throw the ball and try to get to 10 yards because that's more yardage, it's more efficiency, it makes more sense. And for that era, it made sense to throw the ball. But now things have changed, right? They have these too high looks. Defenses aren't as willing to give up these deep balls anymore. They recognize that these passers can make these throws at a higher rate. Another reason why that whole era came about, right? If you're wondering, how did we even get to a point where NFL defenses were okay with giving up deep balls? You got to remember what the quarterback landscape looked like from 2011 to 2017, where we basically had no new quarterbacks enter the popular NFL discourse in that time frame. Like, you just go through those drafts and like, yeah, there's an Andrew Luck that sticks around for a couple of years and then retires. And then there's like a RG3 who had a good year. But really look at the quarterbacks in the draft classes, especially between 2005 to 2017, and look at how many of those guys became all pro caliber quarterbacks. It's not very many. There was a drought of quarterback play, which meant that quarterback play was at a low, which meant that throwing the ball deep didn't make sense because you couldn't complete those balls at a high rate, which meant the defense adjusted to trying to stop the run because throwing the football wasn't as efficient for a lot of teams, which meant that they were willing to give up deep balls because they did not think that the quarterbacks that were in the league, most of them, could do anything with it. That's how we got to the point to where a Pat Mahomes enters the league in 2017. He sees all these looks and he realizes, I can just go deep downfield, and he starts attacking that. And then that rolls into a boom of quarterback play, right? Between 2017 and 2020, the number of quarterbacks who got big time second contracts is astronomical. And all of these guys are taking advantage of the fact that these defenses were built and born in an era where they did not trust quarterbacks to make deep throws, so they dared them to do it. Now that's changed. The quarterbacks, the NFL defenses have reacted to the high-level play of the quarterbacks, and now they're playing a lot of too high safety, which means a different skill set is required from quarterbacks, right? Quarterbacks who used to thrive like Russell Wilson, and go check out the video by Dr. Pigskin. He did a great video on this topic, I think like 4 months ago, and I think it's a great resource for any football fan who wants to know what this whole too high thing is in more detail. But basically, now the league's changed. They've adjusted to that. Pat Mahomes has existed. Teams have adjusted. And now they're running a lot of too high safeties. Now, when we talk about too high safeties and how it's affecting NFL offenses, we tend to talk about it in a way where too high safeties sounds like this new thing and it's like a cheat code. And it's not. There's been a simple beat to too high safeties. But again, since we swung so far on the passing pendulum, we ignored the rushing pendulum, right? Now, on the other end, something else happened. A lot of changes that were made to NFL defenses to better defend against these quarterbacks and wide receivers started to swing that pendulum back into the direction of the run game, right? Linebackers have gotten significantly smaller in the last 5 years. On purpose, right? That's how the NFL wants them. They want to be able to go downfield. Part of these too high safety looks and the effectiveness of them in today's game, and what makes them a little bit different from the too high looks that you used to see in the 2000s, is that these linebackers can cover more. Like they're lighter. They're basically safeties, right? Like even when you're in base, you're basically in nickel with the personnel and how these linebackers move around. So you got lighter linebackers to cover the pass game. Also, running backs got devalued during this era, right? We got used to the running backs don't matter crowd. We heard all these people talk about why it's stupid to pay any running back. There's no world that should exist where I have to ever passionately argue for Nick Chubb getting a contract extension, but that happened. I had to do that. I had to make the argument for Nick Chubb to get a contract extension because people just fell so hard into that pendulum of passing the ball that they believed it was never going to go back and that running the football was dead because it's not as efficient. It is the people talked about running the football like the mid-range jumper in basketball, right? But there's a key difference. The reason 3-point shots have killed the mid-range jumpers because 3-point shots are worth 3 points. Ultimately, there's only one way to score, well, two ways to score in football, a field goal and a touchdown. And it really doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you get there. So the elimination of the run game was never going to happen. It was always going to swing back in this direction. And that's where the pendulum has swung back to, is the run game. You look at one of the best teams in the NFL in the early part of the season, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. And they have Justin Herbert, a franchise quarterback, but he's not really throwing that ball downfield. He's not gotten over 200 yards passing yet this season. He hasn't even gotten over 21 pass attempts yet this season in either game that he's played in. But you know what they have been doing? They've been running that ball about 30, 40 times a game. And it's working. Why? Because these teams are in these two high safety looks, which already lightens the box for a running back. And then once they're in those two high safety looks, they have lighter personnel because the linebackers have gotten lighter over the years. The DBs, we've not focused on their run stopping ability. All of these defensive tackles, defensive ends, all of these positions have gotten lighter and more agile to defend the pass. But now they are ripe for an environment to run the football on and get power on and move butts on the line of scrimmage on. And that's what makes it successful. Now, keep in mind, you still need a good quarterback in order for this to happen because if teams don't respect you, they're not going to play a lot of too high safety. So Justin Herbert being there, his presence being there, helps that run game out tremendously. But that's what's going on with the NFL when you hear too high safety. Now, how does this benefit the Cleveland Browns? Well, the Browns are a team that are built to thrive in this too high safety world. If Deshaun Watson can play at a respectable enough level to where teams decide to go too high on him, right? That's the big question with Deshaun Watson. Can he force these teams into that? Can he play at a high enough level? Can he make plays even when he's actually just take what the defense is giving him? Last week was a step in the right direction. We'll see what continues on with Deshaun Watson going forward. But if we're just talking about the Browns' ability to run the football, they have it. I think Deontay Foreman, Jerome Ford, and eventually you'll get back Nick Chubb and maybe even Naheem Hines will pose a serious threat to a lot of defense. Also, this is the reason why the Browns have implemented the choice routes that they have in their new offense with Ken Dorsey, right? This is a big emphasis on why they're doing it. When you get a lot of too high looks or you get a lot of three high looks, that means people are going to be in set places, which means that there are going to be spots open for a wide receiver just by the nature of how that defense looks, which means that if you can read it fast enough as wide receivers and process it fast enough as wide receivers, you can get to the right space, to get to the right area, to get to an open look, and manipulate the coverages and manipulate these teams out of those coverages. And the Browns will be able to run the football. The Browns' ability to play defense, right? They're a little bit different than a lot of defenses because the Browns still don't play as much too high as the rest of the league does. They're not as reliant on too high. Now, the Browns have a really good defense that can back up that run game and give you extra chances, right? I think the combination of the Browns having a defense that can force a lot of 3 and outs because that's the style of defense they are, and give you extra possessions, and the Browns' ability to run the ball will be a winning combination for this team if they just play at a clean level for the rest of the season and play at a higher level when it comes to, just not getting those penalties. So that's my thoughts about this too high revolution, the league changing. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I think it's a neutral thing. I think it's just the natural change and flow that happens, right? This pendulum is swinging towards running the ball. And since the NFL is a copycat league, if the Chargers have success, if the Browns have success running the ball, if all of these teams have success running the ball, this pendulum is going to swing all the way to running backs. People are going to start paying running backs a bunch of money, and that's when it's going to swing right on back to quarterbacks, right? Also, another thing that might just be happening right now is that we had a lot of really good quarterbacks enter the league between 2017 and 2020. We might be going through another quarterback drought, which is going to lead to a lot of running the football, a lot of different things that aren't reliant. And then we're going to get back into the same environment that allowed deep ball throwers to thrive. And that's going to coincide with another influx of passers in like 7 to 8 years. The pendulum always swings back and forth, right? And it's just important to keep your eye on where that pendulum is, because running the ball will never not be important and throwing the ball will never not be important. You're always going to have to do both. And again, that's why I like having Kevin Stefanski in a situation like this, because Kevin, he keeps it balanced with his game plan. He's usually going to be running the ball a modest amount and throwing the ball a modest amount. He's at his best when he's even with both of those. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.